oh, you're a culture vulture, or like like people will describe the collaborative efforts that I've put forth and the artists that I've picked up and lifted up, or shine a light on as me taking, they'll put a negative spin on it and try and tell me, that it's a self-serving thing or whatever. And I think I get really sensitive about that. And I think at that moment I was just like, well, you know what? Then don't even worry about it.
Interesting stuff. Okay, so I did get a chance to watch the entire Drake and Bobbi Althoff sit down. And in that clip that I just played for you right there, Drake was being candid about sort of the narrative that he's a culture vulture and he just takes during the, sort of collaborative process. Now, for context, he was connecting that to something else he was talking to Bobbi Althoff about, in terms of when he, shined some light on her in their first sit down and how things kind of went left. And he talks about being a little sensitive to that, right? Like when he, shines light on something and if he goes left, etc. So the entire interview, I tried to focus mostly on anything rap music related. And some of the stuff is like, especially at the beginning, they're speaking in code, kind of touching on Bobby's divorce and then all the rumors and the Tiger stuff. But the idea is, as far as the culture vulture stuff is concerned, me personally, knowing what I know about Toronto, knowing what I know about the commercialism of hip hop nowadays, it's not something that I really like hammer on, right? I'm not gonna do that. What I will say, a piece of advice for any other artists out there, I do think there is such a thin sometimes as, I guess, either if you want to call it maybe being too accessible and or being oversaturated. So you got to find the balance on that, right? If you're a person that maybe, you like to collaborate, but you're here, you're in Atlanta, you're in this place, you're in that place, especially in hip hop, which sometimes can be regional, don't expect people to always understand, right? Same way if you're not too accessible, people may be like, oh, you're Lauryn Hill, you're hiding, no one sees you. So just find the balance, right? What I will say, another thing he moved on, talked about is, wanting to speak to someone interesting, like this combo that they're having, he finds her interesting, and saying that, he's glad that it, pissed people off and made journalists angry, that he's given an opportunity to someone like Bobby, because he also felt like he played a part in this new era of, artists like Nicki being able to sit down with Casanat and artists being able to sit down with Black Boy Max. And I'm fine with that. My issue with that, and I'm going to show you some other examples, as a combo, cool. But when the musical references and some cultural references come in and the person can't speak to that, they're either not informed enough, aware enough, I don't think it helps the conversation. I don't think it helps you as an artist. But I do recognize that sometimes artists will do that, maybe because then that person not being as aware won't give them as much pushback. And I'll just throw some examples at you. I'm sure you guys have seen a clip about, Fake Ice and Rose and Bobby. And again, if she's playing dumb and this is all part of her character, cool. And she didn't kind of get the Rick Ross joke, right? Or the Rick Ross slide punch. That's that. Another one, when Drake was talking to Bobby about, the conspiracy that he had gotten a podcast taken down. They used the fact that she had played Tiger's music. And then Drake says, I don't know if that's what happened. I don't know. There's some sly things going on with the music industry. There's some sly stuff going on. And Bobby, again, maybe this her character doesn't pick it up. And to me, I go, oh, yeah, nah, you on that regulation shit. You on that bot shit. Do I want to talk about that? Do I want to bring it up? Now, granted, that's probably not what you want to do, right? But it's stuff like that. There's another one where she says there's another, she brings up Future, right? But she's confusing, I guess, the Future she knows is like, yeah, with another Future, which is Drake's manager, Future the Prince, right? The Somali Canadian guy, right? So that's another one that's really interesting. Like, it's funny for jokes, it's interesting, but it's the fact is Shorty doesn't know. But however, I will give her credit for some stuff that she does know. Other than autotune, she also, I guess something must have happened with autotune where she doesn't really know how autotune works. Again, if you're playing dumb, I guess. But one of the things I will say is that she gets to a point where she talked about like something non-music related, Drake's abs. And I was like, hey, man, I don't give a damn. I'm not here to monitor niggas' abs, right? But Drake was able to be like, oh, yeah, I might have just people are saying that I have fake abs and that they call me BBL Drizzy. So calling back to the beef, right? But what I probably happened is I just used too much, Photoshop on my picture or Facetune or whatever app. And then Bobby says, "You sure you want to admit that?" The way she got to that, I'll give her credit for that. It's again, she's not a journalist. It's just a sit down. But I guess part of her being interested in podcasts, I will give her credit for that. I'll say another one I'll give her credit for is, when she says, "So are you scared?" So at one point they were talking about LA a lot and Bobby's homegirls and stuff like that. And then she slid in there like, "Are you scared to go back to LA or to LA?" And then Drake was like, why would I do that? And then she goes, "Well, why didn't you do an LA tour?" And, he explains that his American tour just finished. Again, I don't know if Bobby's playing dumb, but that's something that someone music related would know. Now, there's a point that, they're having a combo. He gives her advice, but I think this, again, is rap music related and, just in general. Now, he had talked to her when he was giving her advice about not letting the first or immediate reactions get to her or the newest comments. And he talked about how when he drops albums, he believes that people have, phone calls about taking stances and narratives on his project. Like, if you're going to say this, I'll say this. And what I find interesting about that, media, especially legacy media, right? I'm not saying that it's okay or it's good to do. They're gonna sit down and do production meetings. You know what I mean? Now, if people are calling, let's say Joe Budden is calling up Charlemagne. I know they don't get along right now, but just walk with me. Like, "Yo, you gonna say this? I'm gonna say that." Yeah, that is nefarious. And I wish he had said names on that one. I will be honest with you, right? So that's that. And now another thing I will say, when he talks about, people having narratives, or he talks about, sitting down with Bobby and, someone that he finds interesting versus, sitting down with a Zane Lowe or something like that. He said that, and have these curated, sort of questions, or, people that he doesn't like, that he's not fond of him. I do find it interesting at the beginning of the interview, they talked a lot, or the sit down, they talked often about how, there was some rift there and they didn't get along. And if Drake was able to, find his way back to good graces with Shorty and be cool, I think there's more than enough people in media that, that are, more informed and well challenged, that he can make good graces with too. But all in all, I think if you like Drake and you like Bobby, the sit down was entertaining. For the music stuff, that was all I thought, was interesting and that I could talk about. I don't think it's candid, but I don't think you're going to get that from a lot of artists. Like, people are sitting with streamers, people are doing women's magazine interviews, people are getting interviewed by their own artists. That's just kind of the day and age we're in, and you're going to try to see what you can strip off the fat. You know what I'm saying? Like, just strip the fat off and then take the muscle. Now, I thought Drake's outro was funny because the entire thing was just like a proper sit down and, just sly jokes and sarcasm. And at the end, I guess bro had one too many drinks and started saying, "I see y'all boys outside." And I'm like, dog, this is not urban radio. This is you with Bobbi Althoff. So let me know if y'all have any questions or anything else that I missed. But it was cool. There's nothing groundbreaking. Nothing groundbreaking. That's kind of the best way I look at it.